Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to VALORANT news, and plenty going on in the VALORANT world right now ahead of the franchising era that is coming in next year by Riot Games. Lots of questions as to which teams actually might get a spot next time around, and Sinatraa revealing that he almost got a spot on the Sentinels roster if things hadn't gone down as they did at the start of Stage 2. We'll see that here in a second. But also revealing that he does still want to return as a professional player, but might not do it unless the stars align. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that, and loads of great support the last few days. Let's just crack on with things straight away here then, with some news from some other regions. So this is the Japanese challenges, well, effectively the playoffs bracket that they're going with over there. So this is how it looks. Zeta division, of course, right here. Crazy Raccoon, Northeptian, definitely some, well, teams and players of note. This is the bracket they go with. The winner of this one, I'm pretty sure, as it was before, which was Zeta division, went all the way through to Masters. We'll see how that works out for these guys this time around. But big questions being raised pretty much in the entirety of Japan and Korea and, well, the entire Asia Pacific region as to which organizations are going to get a spot next year in the franchise ecosystem, because we believe, the rumor presently has it, that well, 10 to 12 teams from each region, so there are 3 regions theoretically next season in effectively the franchise application, as the president and COO John Robinson of 100 Thieves says right here, he's working on the application. But so there are 3 regions. There's going to be an Americas region, which is effectively North America, South America, Latin America, whatever. The entire Americas, that's going to be one region. Then EMEA or EMEA, whatever, Europe, Middle East and Africa, that's going to be another region, and then Asia Pacific, that's going to be another one. So like, apparently in all those regions, there's only going to be either 10 or 12 teams. Now honestly, I think this should be increased. Maybe they do plan to increase it in future, right, to maybe 16 teams. I think 16 teams would be pretty perfect, right, for a lot of these regions, because like at less than 16 teams, you're cutting out an awful lot of really talented players, but also organizations that might well want to get involved. Because if you're only having like, you know, we've talked about this of course before, but 10 teams, let's say from the Americas, then only 6 or 7 of them are going to be North American organizations. Like there's a lot of big name organizations that probably think, okay, well, this isn't really worth it for us, let's just get out of it, which is already what's happened with similar luminosity over the last week or so. But of course, 100 Thieves, they are most certainly looking to apply. Now Bodok actually comes out with his idea of what it might look like in the APAC region. So initially comes up with these kind of 10 teams, but as it turns out, as kind of George Geddes says in the reply here, he believes that Korea gets at least 2 spots, and that, well, apparently so does Japan. So he updates it to look like this. So it's possible that these could be the 12 teams, like Xerxia, you know, Team Secret, Boom Esports, Zeta, Crazy Raccoon, DRX down 1. But I think this is a really challenging one, I think, if you're right trying to figure what you do here. Because of course you want to have some Australian representation, you also want to have some Indian representation, you want to represent a load of different countries here. And I feel like if it's hard enough in the Americas to determine who your 10 or 12 teams are going to be, then it's even, well, much harder, honestly, in some other regions, EMEA and of course Asia Pacific, to determine, okay, which organizations do we want from which countries. Like we want to make sure we're representing the Indian scene and the other scenes in the region. But even in Bodok's list, and he believes this actually could be pretty accurate, he reckons this is more likely. Like, I mean, PaperX isn't making it in unless there's 12 teams, right? So definitely some organizations, regardless, are going to find themselves out of a spot. So we'll see how this one goes. Definitely intrigued to your perspective on this in the comment section below. Speaking of the North American scene, though, Pure from GenG, he's gone. They give their roster update, another organization in a very interesting position, right? Because, I mean, I'm sure they're thinking, okay, what are our chances really of getting a franchise system next year? Can we get in as one of these organizations, one of these teams? It's going to be difficult. Effectively, like, it's not franchising in the way that League of Legends is currently franchised, but it might be rather similar. There's effectively they're calling it partnership, right? But I think a lot of people are saying franchising because that's what they're used to in other American esports, and it will, of course, sports as well initially. Now, speaking of kind of roster changes potentially in the North American side, Knights as well, another team in a rather interesting spot. Ban from the Knights yesterday was spotted playing without the kind of entire roster, so I thought that was rather interesting. Ban might not be on the Knights anymore, or like, yeah, maybe it's just a situation of people looking into stuff more than they necessarily should, but always interesting to look at regardless. Might get some announcement or more talk about this over the coming days as well. Let's just say this from Sentinels, right? So a few days ago, they had a rather tough time. They lost that series to FaZe. Like, I mean, the Haven especially was pretty much unlosable for many different situations, and even Steel has an explanation for that tier in just a couple of seconds time. 542 days, I guess, as of today, since they last played TSM. One of these days we'll stop dodging each other. So yeah, both teams, tough spot. TSM, of course, qualified for the main event, but failed to qualify for the playoffs. They're now officially out of playoffs. They're officially out of the LCQ and the World Championship as well. So tough scenes for them, of course, that we looked at yesterday. Now, apparently, as EG.com says, they're back in business. They've used some sort of composition, like, maybe Phoenix is coming through. Maybe they're just trolling around, right? Because, yeah, they might be practicing, but, like, what's the point in TSM practicing anymore? I guess they have one more game, so they've got to play that one. Try and gain back some pride, but there really is nothing for these guys to focus on for the rest of the year, and now they've really just got to hope that their organization gets their act together and can actually secure a spot in the partnership league, because if they don't, who knows what happens to some of these players. It's going to be serious chaos, guys, the next few months. It's honestly quite quite remarkable. Now looking at Sentinels here in some more detail, as Zekhan says, you know, you've been watching too much Sinatraa or whatever, but of course Sinatraa, we did see a couple of months ago, was trying to get back into the professional circuit, and he believes that he almost managed to achieve it in a pretty perfect situation on Sentinels, but he reckons that if another perfect situation does not come along, or like, effectively it's going to be a long time until a situation comes along where Sinatraa believes that he will be able to play and everything will work out well for him because he enjoys streaming, I'm sure makes a lot of money streaming, wants to compete again, but he understands and recognizes it's an awful lot of effort, and he needs the situation to be perfect if he wants to step back. Apparently that almost happened on Sentinels, but we believe the whole training situation, which now he has completed, would kind of effectively held him back from competing and joining Sentinels once again when cNed joined. Now, just before we kind of share the clip on this front, just wanted to say this from Steel because I thought it was funny really how he says such an obvious and basic thing that Sentinels messed up here in this game. Effectively what happened is they bought too heavily on their kind of half by light by round here. When it was 9-12, all they had to really do is save completely and say, okay, let's have 2 good gun rounds to close out this half. They buy a little bit too much here in terms of armor, utility, that type of stuff, and it means that they get 1 decent buy round in, they lose this one without saving the operator, and then they have pretty much a half buy again or a forced buy at the end of the game that they lose as well. So pretty basic economy management here that effectively Sentinels messed up in this series. If they had Sinatraa, who knows if things would be the same, but yeah, apparently Sinatraa was going to return and that things were almost ready to go, but he can't talk about it, he says, because more than likely him tweeting this out was a bit of a mistake by his front, because by tweeting out this context, basically like he was supposed to do some sort of training, then Riot effectively got some backlash saying, okay, you let this go without doing training, and then Riot were like, okay, you have to do the training. Sinatraa has now done it, but by the time he did it, it was too late for him to join Sentinels.
Like, it would have to be pretty perfect.
Best flank control today.
I've been speechless this whole game, Rib.
It would take a lot. It would take a lot. That's why it'll be a while, because it has to be perfect.
Absolutely absurd stuff from APOC today. And they have the ultimate on that too. So now Cosmic Divide is up to see if
it was close to perfect.
Exactly. Get the site, boom, coming up onto A. And this even gives Jaws an easier time to get in with the
team. Was close to perfect.
Information crashes on the top of
That's
A-Rab. He hears the footsteps back towards the A site. But that was a costly mistake for APOC doing that out
and then something happened, but we cannot talk about it. No, it's not feels bad, bro.
And now that starts the bleeding.
Like, it's a 50-50, bro. Like, that's why it has to be perfect, because I just don't want to come back. Like, if it's not. Well, I just like streaming too.
The part about being pro, like, I don't want to go back unless it's not perfect, bro. It's a lot of work, bro. A lot of dedication and work. It's not something you just like randomly just do, you know?
So Sinatraa tweeted that out, I believe, on the 14th of April, and just a few days later, on the 22nd, that's when cNed officially joins the team. I think it was like one day before the roster lock or something. They got cNed in, but the rumor had it around this time that they wanted Sinatraa back in the team. That was their plan, to bring him back, like after his kind of suspension was over, and he would have been able to play. But of course, that isn't how it works out. cNed joins the squad instead, and that is the team, of course, that they go for. They've had some really hard times with the TenZ being unwell situation, the sick family matters that he's having to go and deal with right now. So hopefully everything working out over there. But of course, failing to qualify here for the playoffs, failing to qualify, it seems, for the LCQ and the World Championship. So now they're in a similar spot to TSM. They've got to hope their organization can manage to apply for franchising appropriately and will actually secure that spot for next season, because who knows what that roster looks like. But again, it's not just like, look, I want to return to professional play. I do want to compete, but only in a situation that's perfect, right? He enjoys streaming, as I say. I'm sure it's rather lucrative. So he wants to make sure that if he does return, it's actually in a situation that he believes not only he can win with, or a team that actually has potential, but also a team that's going to support him and kind of be behind him in a sense, because Sentinels, the organization that has committed to Sinatraa, but other organizations don't necessarily want to go near him for understandable reasons. Nadeshot said from the 100 Thieves side that he has respect for Sinatra's talents, but as an organization, they can't really go near Sinatraa due to the implications and the PR and this type of stuff. So first of all, it's going to be difficult for Sinatraa to find an organization outside of Sentinels that wants to commit to him, especially if franchising happens and Sentinels don't get a spot right. Who knows what happens there? Maybe they do. But also to find a roster that's confident in him, has history, maybe playing with him, right? Who knows? Like the Sentinel situation, as he says, would have been perfect. Didn't work out due to the training situation, and now it might be an awful long time until he finds another spot like that comes along, especially with, as I say, the chaos that's going to happen in the Valorant world over these next few months. Let's dive into the guard situation as well as we round out the video here, because the guard are flying from California over to Texas to finish out their season. So the guard team, they're back in business. They effectively need to win one last game. If they win this game, they get to the playoffs. If they win that one, or if they win the playoffs, of course, they get get back to Masters, and they kind of need the points to a degree if they want to get through guaranteed to Champions, because it's only 200 points right now they have based on their performance last time around. If they let another team win playoffs, win the Masters, or, you know, do whatever in the Masters, they might get forced out into the LCQ. That's not what they want at all. So I get as Valentez back in Texas for the remainder of Stage 2. Let's go, stand guard. And I mean, yeah, effectively next week, the only match that matters anymore, really, apart from seeding, which is also important, seeding is also important, but the key game really is the guard versus NRG. The winner of that goes to playoffs, the loser of that goes straight out of there, right? And guard maybe slightly right now are favourites, but yeah, difficult to say by the time we get to next week. They're pretty much doing everything they can to take the advantage in this series. And just to finish up with this, I thought it was rather interesting, just kind of like giving some idea as to who the clutchest teams are in the game. This is by Willminder, the 1v1 win rate of all the teams in the NA VCT stage group, or group stage, after week 4. So like effectively OpTic, of course, 3-1, Sentinels 0-4, but those two teams are the highest in terms of 1v1 win rate, right? So they arguably have the clutchest players, or of course, like 1v1s are always kind of difficult to define, because let's say it's a 2v1 and this guy kills my teammate and then I immediately trade them out. That's effectively a 1 versus 1 victory, but I didn't really have to work that hard for it. But you know, still I think it shows to some degree which teams are setting up well for those situations to make sure you can get those trades and clutch up the 1v1s effectively, but also in a situation where, like, okay, which teams have the clutchest players, right? You put Marved in a 1v1, he's barely ever going to lose it. For example, on OpTic, no surprise, they're number 1. Sentinels right behind them, Ghost, TSM, 100 Thieves at 50-50, and then some teams have pretty shocking 1v1 win rates, right? We look at Cloud9, 7 out of 19 1v1s they found themselves in, they only won 7 of them. NRG have only been in 10 1v1 situations, they've only won 3 of those. FaZe have won 4 out of 10, and yeah, teams like the Guard or Exit, for example, 21 kind of they've been in, 9 of them they've won. Luminosity have a pretty bad record as well, as do Evil Geniuses. So we'll see if these change up over the coming weeks, but very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit in a like button, tell us your YouTube gods, this is a good video, I just like you should see it as well, and I grow the competitive Valorant community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.